We have a lot to go over last night, including the breaking news. But first things first, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
These defendants came here not to enjoy our lakes, our beautiful summers, or our warm people. They came here because they knew and understood that Minnesota was a place where taxpayer money could be taken with little risk and few consequences.
That is so true, Joe Thompson, as a prosecutor. Bigger than anyone thought. Minnesota's Somali scandal blowing up now. And in terms of scandal, I'm talking bilking billions from the coffers, from the American people, from the citizens of Minnesota. The worst is yet to come, my sense.
Number 2.
Federal agents breached a storage locker in Salem, New Hampshire, in search of Claudio Neves Valente, we believed shot and killed 2 Brown University students and an MIT professor. Federal agents found Neves Valente dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Brown, an MIT killer, found dead in a storage locker, the chase, the killer, and what led to these brutal murders.
Number 1.
Next year, you will also see the results of the largest tax cuts in American history. And next spring is projected to be the largest tax refund season of all time.
That is President Trump selling his economy. The economy will make or break the Trump term, too, and there are signs it's beginning to awaken. Will it be in time for the midterms? We'll look at the numbers and the party game plans, because the DNC thinks you're in a really good place, but they've made, I think, one tactical mistake, and the RNC says they're up against it. But if the numbers turn around, we'll see. Can an off-year election tell you about a midterm election? Carley, Shimkus, first things first. The president's got a big announcement today. Do we have any idea what that announcement is?
We do not. And Aisha Hassi's on the case. She's in front of the White House right now. She said that she's going to try and figure it out. We don't know what the announcement's going to be, but it's going to happen, I think, at 1 o'clock.
My sense is it's the economy, but also we know things are heating up in Venezuela because we said that none of these sanctioned tankers are going to get in and out. And then yesterday, Maduro sent his Navy to escort some tankers in and out.
Yeah.
So we know that his Navy, what's left of it, would just be
doesn't hold a candle to the
and what we got in the region. So as soon as we decide to hit their Navy, things escalate.
Yeah. I wonder if it's going to be economy or that. I feel like if there was something going on in Venezuela, I don't know if it would come in the form of an announcement. I think that would be more immediately tactical on the ground in Venezuela. But there are a lot of questions over the administration's ultimate goal when it comes to what exactly the president wants to do there and the means with which he's doing it.
So I want you to hear. So your sense. I had Jason Riley on yesterday on the Wall Street Journal, and he's kind of down on the economy. And then you read Charles Gasparino today in the New York Post. He said indicators are pretty positive, but the question is, are they going to come in time for the midterms? So you look at the core inflation, 3.1 to 2.7. Now you're not an economist. I'm not an economist, but just know this: the market loved it. It was up by 400, 500 points because it came in lower than expected. Job numbers in the big picture higher, a little bit higher than normal, but in the small picture higher than normal, but in the big picture historically low. 4.6%.
Yeah. So the number yesterday was supposed to be 3.1%. It came in at 2.7. Great number. Great headline for President Trump. When he goes to North Carolina later today, he's obviously going to focus on that. The backstory is that a lot of people are saying, well, because of the government shutdown, some of the information that we usually use didn't come in. So this picture is murkier than usual, typical. So take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But still, it's a good number that the president could ride this high right now, especially when the focus is on the economy. When it comes to how people feel and what the president is saying when it comes to affordability, I really feel for him because right now he is, and this is 100% fact, what's happening with the economy right now is not his fault. Inflation has gotten better under the Trump year that we just had, but prices are 17% higher than they were because of that 9.1% inflation that took place under President Biden. And those prices just don't go down. So inflation is better. That means that the inflation rate has slowed, but we're still paying those higher prices as a result. And the only way that it goes down, the prices go back down to pre 9.1% is if we enter a deflationary economy. And that is a whole bag of wrong for a lot of other reasons that we don't want to have happen. So, what does he do? I guess you get wages up, and that would
you get wages up, and you slow the increase in prices as much as possible.
Which is happening right now.
I believe he's going to make an announcement. The more I think about it, something on housing, because I thought the housing thing was coming up last night 2 nights ago in his speech, and it didn't. So maybe that's going to be it because we know this. If you're in a 3% mortgage and the mortgage rate is 6%, you're not going to move unless it's absolutely an emergency. You have to move because of work. So you wait. But if you can get that down to 5 or 4.5, then suddenly the 3% mortgage maybe is 3.3%. You're like, you know what? I'm going to make the move now.
Yeah.
And that's why if you have a new Fed chair who's more apt to do that, which I'm sure that's going to come up in the interview process, that might be the perfect scenario. I want to get to the Brown investigation, but I also want you to hear Larry Kudlow. Not only does Larry know his stuff, he also knows the administration. Cut 6.
Last night, he certainly took a major first step to persuade people that there's a Trump economic boom brewing. Over the past 3 months, the CPI is up only 2.1%, and the core, ex-food and energy, is only up 1.6%. This doesn't yet reflect the plunge in oil prices from about $100 a barrel at the start of the year to really just about $55 right now. It's incredible. Gasoline prices falling below $3. They're going to continue to fall towards $2. But the power of oil permeates throughout the whole economy, affecting hundreds of sectors. This is drill, baby, drill.
So it's by me, I saw this morning, 282. I don't know. You're in New Jersey. You got a little bit of taxes they put into there.
Well,
right?
I mean, I live in New York City, so gas is something that I don't have. I haven't driven in like 15 years.
Well, do you talk to your parents?
Yeah, but the typical conversations doesn't start with like, "Hey, what's a gallon of gas in Long Valley, New Jersey?"
Really?
No.
That's a weird relationship. Why don't you?
I don't ask.
You don't talk about utilities?
Well, you know what? Actually, I did end up talking to my dad a lot about it because utilities in New Jersey were so high. Remember that was a big topic of conversation when Jack Ciattarelli was running, and he says that his utility bill increased by double. It went from like $200 to $400.
Oh, don't worry. The new governor's going to freeze it. That'll solve it.
But next time I'll add, Dad, how much did you pay for a gallon of gas?
If you don't mind.
I will.
All right? Enough about my life and my child and my marriage. So let's talk about what happened yesterday. Claudia Manuel Nieves Valente is the accused killer, now killed himself in his storage locker after he first walked into a Brown classroom, room 266, and just started shooting people, killing 2, wounding many. Got out. We don't know how he came in. We roughly know how he got out. We know that he could walk in and out. Who would think that a homeless person would be the key to this investigation?
Can you believe that? And it was a homeless person who was living in the building where the shooting took place, which opens up a whole bag of questions over security.
He posts on Reddit. The guy's name is John. He ends up being the person who is the second person of interest that they posted a couple of days ago. They said, we want to know him. We're not saying he did anything, but we see that he interacted with the suspect. And boy, did he. He posted on Reddit that he walked this guy and he asked him, why do you keep walking around here? Your car's over there. And he says, I don't know you. I don't know you from nobody, was the quote throwing at him. Why would he say something like that with such bad English? Maybe because he was born in Portugal, immigrated in here, became a citizen. His visa was naturalized. But this guy, John, spotted this. There was something up with this guy.
Yep. Yeah. So
picked out the car.
John was also a former Brown student. I don't know if we'll ever really fully know him or if he'll ever do an interview, but my take on who he is as a person is probably somebody who's very smart and maybe even too smart for his own good because he went to Brown and now he's being described as homeless. So sometimes that happens. It doesn't translate to real world, but extremely observant because he had several interactions with this guy and knew just something in his gut told him this guy should not be on this campus. And there was something about him that bothered him. So he kept on saying that he told police he was playing like a game of cat and mouse with this guy and then was not at all surprised when he turned out to be the shooter.
So you see him on video, look at him and then run.
Yep.
So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what's he afraid of? What did that guy have? Did the guy have a gun in his hand or something?
Yeah.
But it turns out it seems to be until he speaks, which could be soon. He could be $50,000 richer. Until he speaks, we don't know. But maybe he was just kind of hawking this guy, trying to find out what he was up to. But he was also able to describe the car, a Nissan. And the guy did rotate his plates, put another phony plate over that, but it didn't throw off the investigators. But that happened Saturday at Brown. Monday, he executes an MIT professor, nuclear fusion professor, who he evidently had as a classmate in Portugal.
I mean, the twists and turns and horrors of the story know no ends. And that professor died in front of his family. His wife was there. And man, the fact that this shooter remembered this MIT professor, knew where he lived, tracked him, and was successful in doing all of this is just, it just boggles the mind. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about have to do with the security cameras. And there's a focus on that for a reason, because there were 2 security cameras in the building that the shooting took place. They were both on the outside of the building, none on the inside, but there were more than 2 exits and entrances. And yesterday, during the press conference, the president of the university said, well, I don't think the lack of security cameras really had anything to do with the shooting. Really? How can you be so sure of that? Because this shooter didn't want to get caught. He was using a cell phone that hid his location. He was using credit cards that had a different name. So by all accounts, he wanted to get away with this. So if he went to Brown and saw, oh man, I can't get into this building easily. The door's locked. You need a key. I don't have one. There's security cameras everywhere. There's police stationed inside the building. I mean, I don't want to get caught. Maybe I won't do that. I mean, these are things that the university is going to have to answer for.
So, and I'll add to this. Okay, let's say it didn't stop anyone from coming in. Let's say you got in there. Don't you want a video of the killer? And maybe there's no Monday execution if there was knew what that killer looked like on Saturday. Here's Paul Morrow talking about the homeless situation and what he's found in the past, because he, as you know, he was a former detective. Cut 19.
I'm actually not that surprised that it was a homeless person that stepped up. I'm going to tell you what. Homeless people know everything that's going on in the vicinity of where they've decided to squat. Even if it's a cardboard box outside. You know, when I was on foot patrol, if you buy a homeless guy a Snapple, he'll tell you everything that's going on in your patrol block in 10 minutes. He knows everything. So this guy, he did the thing that homeless people very often do. They're actually proprietary about, as the saying goes, be it ever so humble, right? And so that's why he says, this guy doesn't belong here. Nobody knows that building like this guy that was living downstairs next to the boiler or something. Shows you how bad the security protocols were. But it does show you just a sort of human dynamic here that he felt something was off. He followed this guy. He scared the guy ran. But then he came forward, as we know now, and he's the one who allowed the police to button the whole thing up.
How about that? And I mean, he does deserve a lot of praise, and he got it last night. And one of the questions at the press conference is, does he get the award? And the head of the FBI agency that was FBI Boston that was there said, I'm not part of divvying up that money, but I think he should get a portion of it. There were also, he said, other tips that led to the to finding out this person. I also wonder when he shot himself, if he knew that law enforcement was closing in on him. Mm-hmm. I hope that's the case. Yeah. I hope that he was scared at the end of his life, because he deserves that.
Carley, stay there. When we come back, Minnesota, what this unfolding scandal means to the future of Governor Walz and other immigrant groups, perhaps. Don't move.
House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer is accusing Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and AG Keith Ellison of not cooperating with the committee's investigation into some of the widespread fraud happening there with the social services in the state. Do you think they should cooperate with the committee's investigation, and do you have concerns about what's happening in the state?
James Comer is a joke, an embarrassment, an unserious individual, and a malignant clown.
You talk about classless. Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader who wants to be the next speaker, describing the oversight chair as that because they want to look into a multi-billion-dollar scandal in Minnesota. Carley.
I cannot believe how much money has been wasted, taxpayer money, and it is a fraud scandal of epic proportions and like nothing we've ever seen before. So for him to criticize somebody who's actually looking into this and saying that something's wrong here is just partisan politics at its finest. I mean, he's got no backbone when it comes to this one.
$18 billion in claims paid out by Medicaid in Minnesota, half of which has been known to be fraudulent. 14 programs were likely exploited. One defendant submitted $1.4 million in fraudulent claims using some crypto. The 5 new defendants joined 8 others in charge. What do they have in common? All new immigrants from Somalia. 2 defendants pocketed $750,000 instead of helping Medicaid recipients find stable housing. We know about the future Feeding the Future program, the autistic program, the assisted living program. They all cashed in, took the money, and many of them sent it right back to Somalia.
So this is these numbers are new, right? Because we originally thought it was $1 billion, and we're saying, wow, that's a lot of money. Now we're talking about several billion, and this is brand new information. Is that right?
Yes. Listen to Joe Thompson, the first assistant U.S. attorney in Minnesota, cut 28.
Minnesotans and taxpayers deserve to know the truth of the fraud. The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud.
How does Keith Ellison and Governor Walz and Congresswoman Omar say, I had no idea?
I know.
Does anyone believe that?
Listen, you know what I do believe is that a lot of this had to do with race and identity politics, because one of those fraudulent organizations, I believe it was Feeding the Future, they were asking for so much money all at once that some of the state agencies started to say, I don't know about this. This feels like a lot of requests coming in. Are you sure that all these people need all this money? This is really what's happening on the ground? And they said to the state government there, they said, do you really want to question this? Because if you do, we'll go to the media and say that there's a racist situation happening here. And the state agencies backed off. That's how powerful the fear of being accused of racism, even though there's nothing racist about it, is. And I think that has a lot to do with what happened here.
And how about the fact that some politicians are afraid of losing the Somali vote? And they got about 80,000 and growing.
Yeah, that's another big part of it. And now we have Ilhan Omar in Congress, and she represents a whole lot of what's going on.
If you do a thorough investigation, I guarantee you, Carley, will be back here in the new year talking about how they knew it was going on all along. Keith Ellison especially. Thank you so much, Carley.
Bye, Bri.
And meanwhile, Shannon Bream is standing by now, anchor of Fox News Sunday, Fox News chief legal analyst. Shannon, what a week we've had.
Oh, my goodness. Where do you even start?
Well, I mean, first off, I guess we start out what happened last night with Brown.
Yeah.
And finding the shooter are the same. I don't know about you, but just before we get into details, I was extremely frustrated about those press conferences. And it's not that a lack of progress, but when you open up and just giving your opinions and talking about the town and, and thanking people, when you have an assassin on the loose and blurry pictures to go on, I just thought it was a tone deafness.
And telling people there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, that obviously was not true for this MIT professor, and who knows where else this suspect may have ended up going. I mean, this is a story I feel like you couldn't even script this as a movie. I mean, the homeless guy living at Brown, who is the guy that cracks the whole case, like, it's just insane. And I agree. I think so many of the local officials just appeared so overwhelmed and, unable to provide relevant information at a time that was a real crisis. I did think last night when this all sort of came together and we were hearing from the local folks, constantly crediting the feds and other agencies that came in to help. I mean, when I can't remember which one of our reporters sent out, there were only 2 homicides in Providence this entire year. They didn't have a lot of experience, investigating things of this magnitude, but to give the credit to the other agencies that came in to help them, I was glad to see that.
Well, yeah, once, but not over and over again. I don't need to hear from 8 people.
Right. I mean, those early pressers were not confidence-inspiring in producing.
So, Shannon, I'm thinking about, too, because we covered this morning. I watched late last night, but couldn't stay up all night for the Boston presser. But they have John. He's the key figure.
Yes.
Who's homeless, who went to Brown, and he's living in the basement. And they realize he's posting on Reddit rather than go to investigators, which is bizarre. And number 2 is they go, we got to find this guy. He's in the building. So they got to post video of a second person of interest, but yet he's actually in the building. So did anyone mention, by the way, that looks like the guy that we let sleep in the basement?
Well, and that's the whole question is, okay, this lack of cameras, the lack of, surveillance, lack of security. There's someone living in this building, and I'm sure he didn't want to come forward because he's worried about getting himself in trouble, maybe losing his place to live, and who knows how long he's been there. But if that doesn't suggest to you that there were real security lapses on Brown's campus, not to mention all the stuff our colleague Paul Morrow has pointed out over, the record of crimes on Brown's campus, at least what was reported over the last few years, it's kind of shocking, and it makes you wonder whether how much of this was going on was not being handled properly. I mean, this case, while we may have the man, they believe is a suspect in all of this, it raises so many more questions, and questions I think that you should be asking if your kid is on any campus around the country about how it's being monitored and are your kids safe?
Yeah, so I want you to hear from Ted Dox. He's the FBI special agent in charge. Cut 13.
Mr. Valente was a physics student. Also, we know that the MIT, the victim there, was in that discipline as well. I will tell you that there's multiple phases to an investigation. And so now, in a sense that we know the subject is deceased, now that investigation continues to find out all of those answers to your question, sir. It is believed that in Lisbon, that those two individuals attended the same university in Portugal.
So this guy walks into his house and just kills him in cold blood, and his family's, he has 2 little kids, his family's there. Now, immediately, and I'm not being critical of the investigation, I'm critical of the communication. And I don't need to know everything if it's going to hurt your investigation. But you don't have a press conference and they say, well, you have video? Yeah, I'll put it on the website. Excuse me, we're at a press conference. This is, don't come out to the press conference and tell me I'm going to put the video of the would-be assassin on the website. I mean, and then the police chief knew absolutely nothing about anything ever. I watched his one-on-ones. He had no idea what was going on.
Well, and leadership at the school.
Oh.
Couldn't tell us what was going on in that classroom, who was there, what the event was. I mean, they're saying things that we already knew out in the media, and you've got, some of the leadership at the school like, oh, I haven't heard that, or I don't know that, I can't answer that, I can't address it. It's like, huh? I mean, it did seem like folks were very much in over their heads. But again, raises to me the bigger questions about, well, how are presidents on other campuses not as esteemed as Brown? Like, how are these other campuses handling that?
Oh, I know. I agree.
Are they aware? I mean, is the leadership or the security? We hear all the time, cameras everywhere. Then you can read a license plate from space and all this kind of stuff. But the best that we had was not really great at the beginning of this case, what was being provided to try to help crack it.
And by the way, an explanation of it's an old building, not good. All right. Ring doorbells can go on any building.
Oh, my
anything.
goodness, yes.
So Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Noem, says now, in light of the fact that the killer got a visa, it was admitted to a legal permanent resident at JFK International Airport in 2017, so he was allowed to be here. He got a diversity immigrant visa. He said it was a random lottery. So she says the Brown University shooter entered the U.S. through the diversity lottery immigrant program and was granted a green card. The heinous individual should never have been allowed in our country. President Trump fought to end this program following the devastating New York City truck ramming by an ISIS terrorist who entered under the same program, the DV-1 program, and murdered 8 people. And at President Trump's direction, I am immediately directing the USCIS to pause the DV-1 program to ensure no other Americans are harmed by this disastrous issue. I mean, the lottery to come in here does seem kind of bizarre.
Well, it does. And as you guys pointed out on Fox and Friends this morning, the vast majority of people in this country illegally have overstayed visas. So, you got to know when somebody gets an entree into this country, if you're not tracking them and keeping, tabs on them, that's your biggest problem. They're going to stay here. And it's not until something like this happens that we're like, wait a minute, what was the chain of events here that led to this guy getting here and staying here? I mean, they're really big problems. Now, I will say with what DHS Secretary Noem announced, and I know that this is almost certainly going to court because there will be a legal challenge saying like, no, you can't shut down the whole program. This is, benefiting people who would never do something like this, obviously. But I don't know that we can even get our arms around the vast problems of this in our country because we don't even know who's here.
And of course, in front of the Supreme Court right now is the birthright citizenship issue. Let's talk about Minnesota real quick. And that is, we found out this is a lot worse than anyone thought. 6 more people were charged in relation to the fraud in Minnesota's government programs and may cost taxpayers about $9 billion. They've been systematically bilked out of that in state and federal funds when programs that you would think feeding the future, autistic programs for children. You have assisted healthcare, home care. They just were taking money by the millions and billions. I want you to hear Joe Thompson put it in perspective today. Cut 27.
These defendants came here not to enjoy our lakes, our beautiful summers, our warm people. They came here because they knew and understood that Minnesota was a place where taxpayer money could be taken with little risk and few consequences. Fortunately, through the hard work of the agents, that we have been able to charge them for their role here.
So your thoughts on this?
It just is going to get worse, I think. The more you peel back the layers of this onion, the more people you feel were involved. The fact that allegedly people who were charged with some of this stuff are still getting some kind of payment, some of them. I mean, these government programs are behemoths. We all know once you launch a government program, very hard to scale any of it back. Even things that came in as temporary, quote unquote, emergencies during COVID and that kind of thing. There was just so much room for corruption without follow-up. And listen, we hear all the time this debate over cutting entitlement programs, those kinds of things. People completely freak out. They keep having this discussion on Capitol Hill about, okay, let's at least cut the waste, fraud, and abuse. And then you'll have people push back and say, well, there's not that much. It's really not going to make a difference. Well, apparently there is that much, at least in some states. And we got to be willing to have that conversation. But there has to be accountability here. And I think a lot of people out there who even know about the story, hearing about it, it's like, no one's going to jail. There's going to be no accountability. Now, there may be because there are dozens of people indicted. But what about leaders of these agencies, of the government entities who should have had a better grasp on what was going on? There's got to be accountability somewhere.
Like the governor and attorney general.
Like the governor and the attorney general.
Shannon, who's on your show?
So we're going to have Kevin Hassett to talk about the economy and maybe the next Fed chair, the top economic advisor to the president. We're also going to have Congressman Fitzpatrick, a Republican, Congressman Swazi, a Democrat, to talk about how they're going to fix this major healthcare implosion that is apparently coming.
Just promise me one question. Get Democrats to admit that Obamacare is not working. That's why they need these emergency, nonsensical fixes.
And it's been interesting to me that conversation has been happening in Washington. You've gotten some of them to admit, like, okay, the underlying program is a problem. So there are short-term problems. That's the subsidies. The long-term problem is exploding healthcare costs. And that shows up in all of our Fox polling this week, too, as number 2 in concern, only behind inflation. So got to do it. What about you? What can I watch on One Nation?
Frank Linton is going to be on with us, break down and tell us what the midterms are going to be like for both perspectives. Got Kevin O'Leary on the economy that matters so much. And then we're going to look at payment in sports with Eric, how these parents are affording to keep let their kids up.
Okay, and dance party? I'm going to keep asking every week until it actually happens.
It's not on the schedule, but you never know.
All right, then I'll have to tune in.
All right.
I'll see you Sunday night.
Go get him, Shannon.
Okay, bye.
Go get him and watch in the morning, Shannon Bream, all over. Check your local listings.
The motive is going to be a lot less specific than a lot of the speculation had it. The commonality between the two crime events seems to be tenuous at best. We may never know, and unfortunately in police work you don't always get a nice, neat resolution, but it looks to me like where we're going to end up is some general gripe against the school, somebody leading a slipping down life. And then there's this professor at MIT who seems to have been everything that this guy perhaps wanted to be and never quite became.
That's Paul Morrow going through the investigation and having great sources to tell us what we now know about this killer, directly linked to the MIT assassination of the professor and the random killing at Brown University. Let's go out to Stuart Kaplan, former FBI special agent. Stuart, what surprised you most about the way this all unfolded now that we know so much, but yet there's still questions?
I think, unfortunately, I'm not really surprised by anything. In fact, quite frankly, I think it highlights the deficiencies in that we send our kids to these higher educational learning institutions, an Ivy League college that has, an endowment. It doesn't matter what the number is. It just, I think, first, Brian, I want to parcel out that in this day and age where there's an escalation and a heightened threat level, we can't be reactive. We need to be proactive. That means that when I send my kids to a school, I want to make sure that the school has the resources and the assets that they're trying to prevent and neutralize something before it happens. Because if it starts to happen or it's happening, we are way too late. And then at that point, all we're doing is trying to triage. And that's exactly what I saw being done by the Brown University president. She's trying to triage and make so many excuses. The reality is, Brian, you need video surveillance cameras that are tied into law enforcement that give real-time intelligence. And for the very reason that Joe Blow on the street, who seems to be, perhaps it doesn't matter, a homeless guy, his curiosity was piqued to the point where he confronted this guy because he sensed that there was something suspicious. If law enforcement had been in the same position to have been watching video camera footage as it's coming in real time, I would assume that police officers would have responded and would have questioned this individual, and that may have neutralized any potential escalation in the threat. But the fact that you have video surveillance cameras that are only there to go back and rewind them and then try to use them as an afterthought is just mind-boggling to me in the age that we are living in, with anti-Semitism, the escalation of open borders, and just such a dangerous environment. So my first criticism is academic institutions must have CCTV that gives live stream, real-time intelligence to law enforcement, so they can use it as an additional
Well, you know
asset.
the problem, Stuart. They're going to say, oh, I want my kid to have privacy, and these students want their privacy.
There's no privacy, Brian, quite frankly, for the purpose of going in and out of a classroom or in and out of a building. The reality is, when you sign up and are admitted to these academic institutions, you, to a certain extent, give up some of those privacy rights. Now, in your own home, you don't want to have video footage of you coming and going or your neighbors coming and going. That's your own God-given right, and we all are free to live as private as we want. But in these academic institutions or these quasi-public institutions, there are no expectation of privacy. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have cameras outside the bathrooms, but I can't believe that any parent would not 100% be unified to say it is absolutely expected to have video cameras to capture people in and out.
So let me just ask you, just on the investigation itself, think about this. The guy's in the basement of the building where the shooting happens, and they got to find his postings on Reddit. And he's homeless in the building who went there. They look at Reddit and go, where is this guy? They have to post video of this guy who's actually in the building where the shooting happened. What do you say to that?
I just think it just blows my mind. And Brian, and again, I felt like last night to some extent when I was on some of your colleagues' programs, I was piling on to Brown and even to the local police department. But let me just unpack this. Brian, when the Brown University Police Department responded immediately following the shooting, they realized obviously the shooter was no longer on site. And so it begs the question, who the hell were they looking for? There had to have been some sort of physical description of someone. And my question to you is, that would have been elicited by eyewitnesses, and it would have been either corroborated or dispelled by video footage that would have captured him coming into the building. And what I find even more troubling, and I said it last night, is my biggest heartbreaking concern is if there were not some mistakes that were made early on, which generally has a cascading impact on the progression of investigations. Could the second homicide of the professor at MIT, that have been prevented?
Stuart Kaplan, always great. Thanks so much, sir. Appreciate all your work over the last few days, and hopefully we will need your expertise much more, but sadly we will.
In September, your government recognised a Palestinian state. Your ministers have attacked the Israeli government. Senior ministers refused to visit the sites of the October 7 massacres. And you created a special Islamophobia envoy alongside an anti-Semitism envoy. Have you taken the threat of anti-Semitism seriously? And can you guarantee the safety of Jewish Australians?
Yes, we have taken it seriously. And we've continued to act. We've continued to work with Jewish community leaders.
So that is the Australian Prime Minister, who has not been strong. Maybe now he is. Maybe he's been scared straight. I'm not sure, because there has been subsequent arrests of a would-be terror attack over in Sydney, while they still now have memorial services for those who lost their lives, and they try to piece together what really took place last weekend. Blaise Misztal, the Vice President for Policy at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America and a leading expert on counterterrorism, which goes throughout, sadly, around the world. You need experts. Blaise, welcome to Brian Kilmeade Show. Appreciate you joining us today. Your reaction about how Australia has handled everything from the shooting and the aftermath.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me on. I think it goes without saying that for 2 years we watched the climate in Australia turn increasingly hostile towards its Jewish community while the government did nothing and, in fact, helped enable it. One of the things that struck me the most was about a year ago, there was a video of Australian nurses and doctors saying that they were allowing Jewish patients to die because they deserved it. That is a sign of a very sick society and one which requires some sort of intervention, some sort of leadership to tell people that this is not okay. And instead, when the government says Israel might be committing genocide, we need to recognize a Palestinian state, thereby rewarding the attacks of October 7th, I think that normalizes the sort of hate that we saw expressed just a week ago, unfortunately. So everything that we're seeing now, I'm afraid, is too little, too late. But hopefully the government of Australia has learned the lesson painfully and is now going to respond seriously, not just to the threat of terrorism in its midst, but to actually fighting this battle of ideas to make sure that Jews can feel safe and aren't harassed and attacked in public spaces of Australia.
Got about 50,000 in Sydney area, over 100,000 overall. Do you think most of them felt secure up until this weekend?
Absolutely not. I think that's the really tragic thing. The Jewish community had been warning the Australian government that there had been a spike in anti-Semitic language and attacks and harassment. According to data that they had released, there had been a quadrupling of anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic acts since October 7th. And the Australian government did not take those reports seriously. They did not do anything to help protect the Jewish community. I think we've heard now that there were only 2 armed guards at this huge celebration for Hanukkah, the Festival of Light that turned so tragically dark last weekend. And so, no, it seems very clear that there were very clear warning signs that things were going badly in Australia, and the government did nothing to respond.
So New York City's mayor-elect had to get rid of one of her staffers because on her X account, vehemently anti-Semitic phrases and rants. Does that surprise you?
It shocks me that in this day and age we have public servants, public officials who are getting away with saying these things. It is not particularly surprising to me that the mayor-elect, who has said or refused to reject the term "globalize the Intifada," would want to hire someone like that. And unfortunately, we saw just last weekend what "globalize the Intifada" looks like in Australia.
Blaise, I wanted to bring you to Jonathan Greenblatt, who joined me a couple of days ago to talk about the state of things.
And I think we are all devastated and mourning the 15 people who were gunned down in cold blood in the largest massacre that's ever taken place in Australia, certainly of Jewish people. Dozens more were injured, and this didn't happen in a vacuum. This didn't happen by chance. This attack was planned in cold blood by ISIS-inspired extremists. They gunned down an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor, grandparents. They gunned down a rabbi, a father of 5 with a 3-month-old baby. They gunned down a 10-year-old girl. The only crime these people committed was wanting to celebrate Hanukkah.
And they did it at a beach with only 4 cops in the region. And it looks like a couple of them were just hiding, even though ultimately one cop did take a bullet and take them down. But it was a Muslim that was the real hero, as he went and thought he was going to die. Just said, I'm just going to go tackle this guy, and grabbed the gun away. And he's from Syria. 2008, he got over to Australia. He loved the country, and he wanted to see the shooting stop. So for people who want to make broad statements that every Muslim hates every Jew, this flies in the face of that. Correct, Blaise?
Absolutely. And I think it goes to show that this is not a Jews versus Muslim issue. This is not a question of Islamophobia. This is a question of the culture of life versus the culture of death. And there is a small subset of the world that espouses a culture of death and wants to perpetuate it on the rest of us. And I was really struck in thinking about what happened last weekend. 2 days before that, a week ago, actually, I was sitting in the office of Ambassador Mike Huckabee in Jerusalem. And one thing he said stuck with me. He said, the enemies of Israel are the enemies of America, because the same people who want to kill Jews, the same people who want to wipe Israel off the map would not stop there. They're going to come after America and Americans, and they're going to come after Western civilization. And I think it's important that we stand up for the culture of life and that we oppose a culture of death wherever it rears its head, whether that's in Australia, whether that's the attacks that happened in Syria against American service members that same day, or whether it's some of the plots that we've seen in the past week in Germany and Los Angeles. It's important that we oppose the violence and oppose the culture of death.
So in particular, you have a huge Jewish population in New York outside Israel. I guess it's the biggest. Do you expect a lot of them to leave when Mamdani comes in, or do you hear about a lot of people deciding to get out?
Look, I think there's a lot of people waiting to see what actually happens. I think there's room for optimism. We have a NYPD commissioner who has been committed to protecting the Jewish community in New York, who is going to remain in place for now. I think there's people who are hoping that the responsibilities of office will maybe moderate Mamdani's urges, but I think there's also a lot of people who are watching very warily and are very concerned about what might happen to their own safety and the culture that he's going to bring in, which seems to suggest that, globalizing the Intifada, harassing Jews, making anti-Semitic statements is going to be normalized and make life more dangerous for Jews, and I'd say for everyone in New York.
Yeah, and lastly, on Gaza, are you optimistic we're going to get to the second phase?
Look, Hamas has repeatedly said that they will not disarm, and I think if there's a lesson of October 7th is that we should take Hamas at their word. When they said they wanted to destroy Israel, they wanted to destroy Israel, and they certainly tried to do their darndest to do it. So if they're saying they're not going to disarm, I think we have to believe that they're not going to disarm. And then the question becomes, who is going to do it? Who's going to go in there and get rid of these bad guys who've been holding not just 200 Israelis hostage for 2 years, but 2 million Gazans hostage for 20 years? And someone needs to do it. And unfortunately, we're not seeing any of our international partners step up to do that job. And it turns out only Israel is willing to fight for the culture of life. Only Israel is willing to stand up to their enemies and ours.
All right, Blaise, thanks so much. Stay safe.
Thanks for having me on.
You got it.